What is going on, everybody? Blake with the Linux Fraud, and today I wanted to go over this interesting article that I found over on Bleeping Computer. Before we do that, though, I want to preface this video with a warning. I am not an expert in cybersecurity, malware analysis, or literally anything IT related. I've never even worked in a help desk position. Not yet at least. For real though, I just want to be fully transparent here and not pretend like I know what the hell I'm talking about. There's a few things in this article that I try to do a little more research on and dig deeper into just so we can learn about it, but these are things I literally just Googled for this video. The idea is for me to learn something right from the video, and if you happen to learn something from watching this, that's awesome. Also, if you're already a cybersecurity guru and you notice that I didn't explain something correctly, which is probably something that will happen a lot, absolutely feel free to leave a comment down below. But of course, if you like this kind of stuff, consider hitting that like button, and also super consider hitting that subscribe button because I would really appreciate it. A relatively unknown advanced persistent threat group named Golden Jackal has been targeting government and diplomatic entities in Asia since 2019 for espionage. The threat actors have maintained a low profile for stealthiness, carefully selecting their victims, and keeping the number of attacks at a minimum to reduce the likelihood of exposure. Kaspersky has been tracking Golden Jackal since 2020, and today reports that the threat actors have had notable activity in Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, and Turkey. Golden Jackal is an APT group active since 2019 that usually targets government and diplomatic entities in the Middle East and South Asia, explains Kaspersky. Despite the fact that they began their activities years ago, this group is generally unknown and, as far as we know, has not been publicly described. The infection vectors of the APT are unknown. However, the researchers have observed signs of phishing operations with malicious documents that employ the remote template injection technique to exploit the Microsoft Office Folina vulnerability. That's kind of an older vulnerability from back in 2022 or something like that. I'm not going to go into that one. Additionally, Kaspersky has seen a case of Trojanized Skype for Business installers that drop a Trojan alongside a legitimate copy of the software. Now, I don't know if you've heard, not too long ago there were some applications like OBS Studio, I know, was one of them, where if you go and search OBS Studio, not anymore, of course, if you go and search for OBS Studio on Google, the first link that pops up is an ad. The first link to the OBS Studio website was an ad, and that was actually that was malware. Somehow threat actors were able to put that link up as an ad on Google without them noticing, and there was a bunch of people that were installing OBS Studio. There was a few other applications, I don't remember which ones they were, but it wasn't actually OBS Studio. It was malware, and I'm assuming that this is kind of the same thing. It was just for Skype. I'm not exactly sure, but that's what I'm assuming that is. While Kaspersky's analysis have noticed code and TTP similarities with Toulas, they track Golden Jackal as a separate activity cluster. So that's kind of just a background on what's happening. They're silently gaining access to these government and diplomatic entities in Asia, getting into their systems, exfiltrating a bunch of data. But now we're going to actually read about the Jackal toolset, which is the malware that Golden Jackal was using, or is using to this day, I'm assuming. According to Kaspersky, Golden Jackal employs a set of custom .NET malware tools that provide various functions, including credential dumping, data stealing, malware loading, lateral movement, file exfiltration, and more. So what is .NET malware tools? Obviously, they're malware. It's malware that gets into a system and steals a bunch of data, right? Amongst other things. But first of all, we have to know what .NET is. And .NET is a software development framework that was created by Windows. It's a framework where you can build Windows applications and services. The primary payload used first to infect a system is Jackal Control. This is one of 5 payloads. So the first one is Jackal Control, which gives the attackers remote control over the infected computer. The malware can be run as a program or a Windows service and can establish persistence by adding registry keys, Windows scheduled tasks, or Windows services. So the second two are pretty self-explanatory, right? Scheduled tasks, you can just schedule a task at a certain point of time. But a registry key or registry keys is basically, in layman's terms, it's basically just a collection of important information, right? System settings, Say if you download an application, then settings for that application would go into the registry keys, information about hardware devices, some important stuff. It receives encoded commands from the C2 server, which is basically the command and control server, via HTTP post requests, which concern the execution of arbitrary programs, exfiltration of files, or fetching additional payloads from the CNC server. And so I could be wrong about this, that's very likely. But what this sounds like is that the malware is actually grabbing those HTTP post requests, which gives them the information about the arbitrary programs, files, and fetching additional payloads, right? Please, somebody let me know in the comments what that's actually doing, because I personally do not know. The second tool used by the hackers is Jackal Steal, an implant devoted to data exfiltration from all logical drives on the compromised computer, including remote shares and even newly connected USB drives. The attackers can execute the stealer with arguments determining the targeted file types, paths, sizes, when files were last used, and exclude specific paths that security tools might monitor. All files matching the set parameters are encrypted using AES, RSA, or DES, which are just different types of encryption, then compressed with gzip and eventually transmitted to the C2 server. The third tool, in which this is, in my opinion, probably the coolest payload of this. And when I say cool, I'm not saying that what the threat actors are doing is cool. That's obviously bad, wrong, and awful. But the technology and everything behind this shit is, it's just interesting, right? So Jackal Worm. It infects USB drives to spread on potentially other valuable computers. When the malware detects a removable USB storage device, it will copy itself onto it. It will create a copy of itself on the drive root using the same directory name and change the directory's attribute to hidden, which means that you can't see it. This will result in the actual directory being hidden and replaced with a copy of the malware with the directory name. So it's still showing that directory name, but inside of that is just the malware. To obfuscate its nature and trick the victim into executing it, Jackal Worm uses a Windows directory icon on the removable drive. If that happens, the worm will infect the host system, establish persistence by creating a scheduled task, and then wipe its copy from the USB drive. Some of this shit is honestly, like I said, my brain can't handle it. It's so fascinating, and it's crazy what people can create, the technology that can be created with computers and just programming and everything. It's honestly insane, and I wish one day I was able to have the ability and fucking brain power to not do this, but to understand this, right? That's the goal. That's my goal, at least. I want to break into the IT industry, but sometimes I think, damn, this shit is way over my head. But whatever, that's why I'm here fucking making nerdy-ass YouTube videos. Regardless, let's go on to the fourth payload. The fourth tool used by the Golden Jackal APT is Jackal Per Info. It's a basic system information collector with the additional capabilities of identifying and exfiltrating browsing history and credentials stored in web browsers. Serving like a typical info stealer malware, Jackal Per Info can also exfiltrate files from the desktop, documents, downloads, and other directories. The fifth and final malware tool presented in Kaspersky's report is the Jackal Screen Watcher, which, if you can guess, it starts just snapping a bunch of screenshots, right? Which is used for snapping screenshots on the infected device. The operators can specify the resolution and image capturing time intervals, and the tool will send the media to the C2 via HTTP post requests in the form of encrypted payloads. In conclusion, Golden Jackal has been carefully using an extensive set of custom tools against a limited number of victims to carry out what Kaspersky believes are long-term espionage operations. Yeah, so their whole goal is obviously not to be caught, right? I don't think any threat actor or hacker wants to be caught. Some of them hide their tracks a lot better than others, right? Finishing this last little sentence, although few things are known about the APT's operational tactics, the diversity in the observed infection chains combined with highly capable malware tools leaves no doubt that this is a sophisticated threat actor. The thing with these nation-state threat groups, right, is they're most of the time they're backed by a government, some government, right? Like Korea has their own, North Korea has their own like Lazarus group, right? So they have a bunch of money and time. That's literally all they have is just money and time to throw into this stuff. So they can do a lot, and they can cause a lot of damage. And so obviously these nation state hackers, these threat groups are, I mean, they're not good, right? They're usually doing some quote unquote bad stuff, but what I'm interested in is the technology behind it. It's just so fascinating to me. And it really makes me, kind of want to kick myself in the ass that I wasn't just glued to the computer back when I was younger. I could have been learning so much in that time, but whatever. It is what it is. All I have is today. So that's about it. I know I didn't really give my opinion on this because as I start reading it, I start realizing that, like, wow, I know such little about this stuff, although it's interesting to me. And I read a lot of articles like this, and I kind of try to stay up on this kind of news. I still have a lot to learn. I have a far way to go before. Not that this doesn't make sense to me, but it's tough to try to like explain it any more than the article did without sounding like a dumbass who doesn't know what they're talking about. So that's kind of why I just wanted to go over this article. I found it pretty interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Of course, all credit goes to Bleeping Computer and what's his name? Bill Toulas, or Toulas. Apologize for pronouncing that wrong, because I'm sure I did. And yes, I did use this picture right here as the thumbnail. So credit goes to them as well for that. Well, actually, it goes to Bing Create, but still. So I tried to create an AI thumbnail as well of a jackal, because I didn't want to just plop this one onto my video, but they came out looking so bad. So I did use that. Of course, all credits go, again, to these guys, Bleeping Computer, for the article, Bill Toulas. And, we can shout out Bing, I guess. Sure, for creating the thumbnail, I guess. All right, everybody, that's the video. Just wanted to share it with you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that thumbs up button. I'd appreciate it. And if you like this kind of content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we have a bunch more content coming your way.